This was all slated to be developed. Then the 1929 stock market crash hit and the Depression, and that was all put on hold. That's what essentially saved this place initially. Formal restoration, active land management has been going on since the mid-1970s. In order for native habitats to thrive here, we needed to bring back natural processes like flooding and fire.
Well, the whole south side of Chicago was wet. It was very swampy. As you start in our upland dune ridge area and you walk northward, you'll drop 12 feet. And these areas were originally wet because they were low. As people went through and farmed all the good high-quality uplands, they of necessity had to go to the wetlands. From the 20s to the 50s, a series of ditches were made in this area to drain it for development. And all the wetland plants, all those rare plants, disappeared from this area. In 1999, we started a project to block off this ditch and 3 others. Just by limiting those 4 points of drainage into the main drainage creek, we brought about an incredible transformation of this area. In those first few years, the resurgence of the wetland plant community was unbelievable. That first growing season, we had thousands and thousands of irises. We had leopard frogs and green frogs. With the return of the water, we found 6 or 7 species of sedges growing in the area, and I'd never heard of them because no one had ever talked about them. The seeds of those plants were surviving here, even for decades and decades of dry conditions.
Prairies do not survive without some fire.
Pre-settlement, the fires were started by Native Americans and by lightning strikes. Eventually you start to get a community that's fire-starved. In the 1970s, Dr. Betts began prescribed fires here on the prairie to reverse decades of brush encroachment. And we burn every year here, but there's still a lot of planning that goes into it.
So Stuart and I and Carl sat down over a period of 6 or 8 weeks through the summer and drew maps and changed them, and ultimately for all those reasons we decided, well, let's burn this unit over here, let's draw the line here. We try not to burn, as a generalization, more than a third of a site a year. We take a lot of things into consideration, things like butterflies and rare plants and all sorts of things. This is a 2-part burn, and the first part's done, and it went perfectly. It went absolutely perfectly. It's just exactly the way it's supposed to go.
We've never had a fire get away from us, but that's not good luck. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. That's why we have the safety record we have.
You're seeing this black, but we're seeing what this is going to look like next year. It's going to be unbelievable. There'll be millions of wildflowers, all varieties, and the place will shimmer with uncommon butterflies.
The prairie looks so much more lush and vibrant after it's been burned. This area was burned in fall of 2010, and there's just going to be a huge display of wildflowers throughout the growing season. And this area has not been burned since fall of 2005, and it's the same plant community on both sides. It's just, this is what happens if you don't burn for a few years versus the previous fall. And you just get carpets of things like golden Alexanders and prairie phlox. You can think of Gensburg-Markham Prairie as an ark. It's a reserve for plants and animals that can only really survive in a healthy prairie ecosystem, and there just aren't too many of those left in Illinois.
The small habitat islands of natural areas in Chicago wilderness will not survive without management. If they are not managed, they are not going to magically stick around.
If you're not burning these places, if you're not allowing natural water flow, attempting to restore them is, in the end, going to fail. Those are two critical natural processes for the health of these preserves. But by doing both these things, it's going to be a healthy, vibrant preserve.